But many times the question is this, is that seems too good to be true. How is it that these index products are able to do this? How is it with an index annuity, you're able to give me, say, 5% to the upside when certificates of deposit on the 1 year are less than 1%? But heck, if that market, the S&P 500 drops, you're giving me 0%. This really isn't rocket science here, right? Here is how the carrier does this. Quite simply, a $100,000 deposit going to the insurance carrier is going to say, okay, so XYZ indexed annuity is what our client is purchasing. They technically don't do this case by case. This was all done before the pricing of the product was done. How are we going to do this $100,000? Well, we, the carrier, may take $98,000, almost all of that money, and where does that carrier invest that money? That carrier invests the money in their general account, right? And the general account is composed of mostly what? It's composed of mostly investment grade bonds, typically, right? Well, pretty much always. If the insurance carrier is doing business within the 50 states, they're required by regulators to have tier 1 capital, which is mostly investment grade bonds. So now let's say that general account, or with annuities, and by the way, I have a white paper. I'm going to click over to a white paper real quick, and it is how the watch is built. Index products, how the watch is built. I'm going over this very high level over about a 4-minute period of time. But if you want to get geeky with this stuff, bull call spreads, how do call options work, all that, that's in that white paper. So a part of that white paper is indexed annuities. Many of them are priced off new money, right? So that means that investments today with that $98,000, how much is it today that the insurance carrier can get from a return standpoint or from a yield standpoint? Well, today that may be 3%, right? So 98% of the client's money is invested in investments at the insurance carrier that are paying, say, 3%. And this new money treatment most of the time is different than life insurance. Again, read my white paper. But we haven't used all of our money there. The carrier has not used all their money. So what do they do with that other, say, $2,000? That is where they go to XYZ Investment Bank and say, hey, listen, we have an S&P 500 indexed annuity here. We want all of the upside in the market that you can give us because we have $2,000 here and we want to buy a call option. Well, that investment bank says, $2,000 on a notional value of $100,000? No, for $2,000, we're not going to give you all of the upside, but that investment bank may come back and say, for $2,000, we may give you, say, everything the market does up to 5%. So the insurance carrier says, okay, here's your $2,000, and we will take that 5%, put it in the contract as a cap, right? So it is the investment banks, most of the time, and by the way, this is simplification. Many times, carriers may do their own hedging in-house, dynamic hedging versus static hedging here, right? But the investment bank, and I don't want to digress too much on that, the investment bank, says, okay, so here's your call option. Thank you for the $2,000, but that 5%, up to 5%, keep in mind that is assuming that the market goes up, because here's the thing, insurance carrier, that $2,000 at the end of every year, assuming it's an annual reset design on the product, that's going to expire either worthwhile or worthless. Meaning, if the market drops, what's the risk of call options? Call options are so risky because you can lose all of your investment. In other words, if the market drops and that call option is an exercise, that insurance company has lost all of their money. But question, is all of their money really all of their money? No, because over here, you have that $98,000 earning roughly $3,000 per year. And by the way, if this were just a straight fixed annuity, what would we do with that roughly 3%? And I say roughly here for a reason. The insurance carrier has to make money. But what does the insurance carrier do with that roughly 3% on a fixed annuity, a straight fixed annuity? They just pass that through to the consumer every year, right? It's basically a pass-through of the bond yield, right? With index annuities, it's not about that. With index annuities, it's about this over here. So what the insurance carrier does is they may take 1% off the top, just a rough example, 1% off the top. That is how the carrier makes their money. Carriers don't care what happens. Oh, well, they do care because they want their clients to get growth. But carriers are still going to make their money over here, as well as rider fees if there's a rider on the policy. But there's still 2% left, right? What does the carrier do with that 2% or $2,000? dollars coming in each and every year. Year 2 call options, year 3 call options, year 4 call options, year 5 call options, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the only difference between a fixed annuity and an index annuity. So when the client looks at you and says, all this is too good to be true, what is this? 5% to the upside, but 0 to the downside? That must be a Ponzi scheme. It's not a Ponzi scheme. And I'm being facetious here. That's how it's done. That is how the watch is built. And again, you can get the white paper that goes much more into detail here. I've sent out probably about 2,000 of these things. Cutting edge subject matter expertise stuff here. So now let's move on to